My name is Maya Johnson. If you saw me walking down the street today, you'd probably just see another face in the crowd, a black woman with a penchant for vintage coats and a quiet demeanor. But if you looked closer, specifically at my eyes, you might see the reflection of a fire that burned 2 decades ago. I'm here to share the story of the miracle of St. Jude's, an event that science couldn't explain and history tried to forget. But more importantly, I need to tell you about the vision I received that night. It wasn't just a dream, it was a roadmap for the years we are living in right now. It started in a small, sweltering church in Alabama. I was 12 years old, sitting on a hard wooden pew between my grandmother, Big Mama, and my auntie. The air was thick enough to chew on, smelling of peppermint candy, old hymnals, and the heavy humidity of the South. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be outside riding my bike, not listening to the reverend talk about the end of days. I remember rolling my eyes when Big Mama shouted "Amen" so loud it rattled the stained glass. I was a skeptic before I even knew what the word meant. I believed in what I could touch, what I could see. But then the organ music stopped. Not a fade out, but a sudden, jarring silence. The air pressure in the room dropped so fast my ears popped. I looked up at the pulpit, and the reverend wasn't looking at the congregation anymore. He was looking through the back wall, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and divine awe. A hum began, low at first, vibrating in the floorboards, traveling up through the soles of my patent leather shoes. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into total darkness. But it wasn't dark for long. A light, unlike anything artificial, a soft blue-white luminescence began to bleed through the ceiling as if the roof were dissolving into mist. I grabbed Big Mama's hand, expecting her to be shaking, but she was still as a stone. "Hush now, baby," she whispered. "It's beginning." That's when I saw the first spark descend. It wasn't fire. It looked like liquid starlight. It floated down and landed on Mrs. Gable, a woman who hadn't walked without a cane in 10 years. When that light touched her shoulder, she didn't scream. She stood up, straight up. The cane clattered to the floor, echoing in the silence. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I realized then that my reality was about to shatter. You might think you know what a miracle looks like from the movies, but you have no idea how terrifying and beautiful it really is. I need you to understand how skeptical I was, because what happened next didn't just heal bodies, it opened a window to a future that is rushing toward us. Are you ready to hear how the impossible became possible? The cane hitting the floor broke the trance. Suddenly, the silence exploded into a cacophony of shouts, prayers, and screams. But the sound felt distant, like I was hearing it from underwater. The blue mist that had dissolved the ceiling began to swirl faster, forming a vortex right above the altar. It wasn't just Mrs. Gable anymore. I watched the choir director, a man who had worn thick glasses since he was a child, rip them off his face and stare wide-eyed at his hands, counting the lines on his palms with perfect clarity. A woman 3 rows ahead, who had been weeping over a photograph, suddenly gasped and clutched her chest, a look of pure, unadulterated peace washing over her features. I tried to run. My instinct was to grab Big Mama and bolt for the heavy oak doors, but my feet wouldn't move. It wasn't paralysis, it was magnetism. The light was pulling me. Big Mama turned to me, her eyes reflecting that swirling galaxy above us. She didn't look like my grandmother in that moment. She looked ancient and ageless. "Open your eyes, Maya," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "Not the eyes in your head, the eyes in your spirit." That's when the light hit me. It didn't burn like fire. It felt like a bucket of ice water poured over my soul, shocking and electric. I gasped, sucking in air that tasted like ozone and roses. The walls of St. Jude's Church began to fade. The pews, the stained glass, the screaming congregation, they all turned transparent, like ghosts. The floor beneath me dissolved into a vast, dark expanse, yet I didn't fall. I was floating. The blue light coalesced into a tunnel, and I was being pulled forward at a speed that should have killed me. I wasn't in Alabama anymore. I wasn't even in the year 1998.
The timeline was unraveling before me like a spool of golden thread. I saw cities rising and falling in seconds. I saw faces I didn't know yet somehow recognized. And then the motion stopped. I was hovering over a landscape that looked familiar but drastically changed. This was the first glimpse of the prophecy, the vision that has haunted my sleep for 20 years. I know this sounds insane. I know you're trying to rationalize this as mass hysteria or a hallucination. But ask yourself, have you ever had a dream so real that when you woke up, reality felt like the lie? That's where I was, standing on the precipice of the future. I floated over a city that pulsated with a frantic, artificial energy. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Towers of glass and light piercing the smog, drones buzzing like angry hornets. But the peace I had felt in the church moments ago was absent here. The noise was deafening, a psychic scream of millions of minds constantly plugged in, constantly distracted. I knew, with that absolute certainty that comes in visions, that I was looking at the world of the very near future. The air tasted of metal and ash, and the atmosphere was heavy with a loneliness so profound that it made my chest ache. Then the shift happened. I saw the sky above this futuristic metropolis turn the same violent shade of violet I had seen inside St. Jude's. A ripple went through the electrical grid below. The lights, the massive billboards, the street lamps, the devices in everyone's hands flickered and died. Total blackout. I watched panic ensue, a chaotic swarm of humanity terrified of their own silence, running through the darkened canyons of steel. But then, amidst the darkness, I saw small pockets of golden light igniting. Not electricity, it was people. I zoomed in, my spirit dropping like a stone toward a park in the center of the chaos. I saw a group of strangers holding hands, forming a circle. They weren't looking at their dead phones, they were looking at the sky and then at each other. I heard a voice, not Big Mama's this time, but a multitude of voices speaking as one. When the artificial sun fails, the inner light returns. I realized I was witnessing a divine correction. The miracle back in St. Jude's wasn't just about healing Mrs. Gable's legs, it was a preparation for this moment, a time when the tools we worshipped would fail us, forcing us to remember the faith we forgot. I saw a date etched in the pavement as if burned by a laser, 2027, the year the noise stops, the year we have to choose between the machine and the soul. It was terrifying to watch the collapse of the systems we rely on, but it was also the most hopeful thing I had ever seen, because when the world went dark, humanity finally started to shine. Do you understand the weight of what I saw? It wasn't the end of the world, it was the end of the illusion, and we are hurtling toward that date faster than you think.
The golden numbers of the date dissolved into smoke, and gravity snapped me back into my body with the force of a car crash. I gasped, my lungs burning as I sucked in the stale, hot air of the church. The blue mist was gone. The supernatural silence lifted, replaced by the weeping of grown men and women. The overhead lights flickered and buzzed back to life, casting a harsh yellow glare on everything. It looked like a normal Sunday service, except for the abandoned wheelchairs and the crutches scattered on the floor like driftwood after a storm. I looked at Big Mama. She wasn't looking at the altar anymore. She was looking right at me. Her eyes held a depth of sorrow and pride that terrified me. She squeezed my hand, her grip iron strong. "You saw the storm that's coming," she whispered, not asking but stating a fact. "And you saw the shelter." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, not because I was sad, but because I was burdened. I was 12 years old, carrying the weight of a prophecy that wouldn't come to pass for nearly 30 years. In the weeks that followed, the miracle of St. Jude's became a local sensation, then a national curiosity. News vans parked on our lawn, scientists came with Geiger counters and air quality testers. They tried to explain it away: swamp gas, mass hysteria, hypnotic suggestion. They interviewed Mrs. Gable, who was now tending her garden without so much as a limp. They couldn't explain the physical healings, so they ignored them. The world moved on. They forgot. But I didn't. I grew up watching the world transform exactly as I had seen in the vision. I watched the rise of the internet, the smartphones, the way we slowly traded our connection with each other for connection to the grid. Every time a new piece of technology promised to bring us closer, I felt a chill, remembering that cold, metallic loneliness of the future city. I watched the date creep closer. We are living in the shadow of that vision right now. The infrastructure is fragile. The spiritual hunger is real. I've spent the last 2 decades preparing, not by hoarding canned food, but by learning how to find that inner light when the screens go dark. I've been waiting for the moment when the artificial sun fails. It's hard living with a clock ticking in your head that no one else can hear. But look around you. Look at the headlines. Look at how tired everyone is. Can't you feel the vibration of the coming stop? So here we are. The gap between that 12-year-old girl in the pew and the woman speaking to you now has closed. The timeline is converging. I shared the miracle of St. Jude's not to entertain you with a ghost story, but to arm you for what is coming. When the screens go black and the artificial noise of our world finally shuts down, don't be afraid. Remember Mrs. Gable rising from her wheelchair. Remember the peace that descended when the power died. The darkness that is coming isn't a punishment, it's a reset. It is the necessary silence we need to hear God again. Big Mama used to say, "It's easy to have faith when the sun is shining, but true faith glows in the dark." You need to decide right now, when the systems fail, will you be part of the panic or will you be part of the circle holding hands? Will you be the one running or the one shining? You don't need to be in a special church to find that spark. You just need to unplug and look within. The miracle is already inside you, waiting for the distraction to end so it can begin. I have seen more of the timeline between now and 2027, specific events, warnings, and beacons of hope that I want to share with you. We have a lot of work to do to prepare our spirits for the shift. If this story resonated with your soul, if you felt that vibration of truth, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Join our community. Let's build our light together before the dark arrives. I'll see you in the next vision.